even though that's the worst post anyone's ever posted, it's drove the racists wild.
Yeah. No, there was, I mean, like you said, there's stuff like we literally can't talk about on this because it's just...
Yeah, it's so bad we can't say what it was.
If you look at the hidden replies on a lot of my tweets...
Don't do it.
They're very, very bad. But yeah, I think you should take John's advice and not actually do it.
Don't do it.
You're not going to be better for it.
They were hidden for a reason.
We're rolling. We're rolling.
This is a real thing. Real thing.
None of you have the balls to stop this. Stop this.
I've got plenty of time. I have nothing else going on today.
We're in the Wedge neighborhood right now.
Okay, we are back on the Wedge Live podcast in Uptown with Mike Norton, Uptown small business owner. Mike, is it true yours is the last remaining storefront where people can walk in off the street and buy 20 to 40 foot shipping containers?
It's just an office, so it's not a storefront. But I mean, we're right by like Black Walnut Bakery and what used to be Lala Ice Cream and is now Sugar and Salt. And then like Kim's and Bronco Bar are less than a block away. Next door to that is the wine bar, the tasting room. Like there's a lot of places in Uptown. Like people are just not spending their time here like they used to.
And I'll say, it smells kind of like the beach here. I mentioned this to you. All the sand, I don't know if people have been sunbathing and using lotion or something. I get a beach smell here in Uptown with the Hennepin Avenue is torn up. There's sand everywhere. It's kind of nice.
Some puddles over here. I don't know, my cologne that I wear is actually that Kramer, the beach. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that.
What are you talking about? Oh, I'm talking about the beach.
Well, maybe someone will get the reference.
Okay, let's go. Let's make our way out of the construction mess onto some pavement.
Look at this bridge situation here. All right, to start out, we have a car in the bike path.
All the time. So Mike Norton, is Uptown alive or dead?
It's definitely not as lively as it used to be, which is unfortunate. And I think a lot of that's perception related. But I mean, we're on Hennepin right now. Here's the old Apple store. Here's the old H&M. There's the old kitchen window. I mean, there's a lot of retail that has disappeared. And when that happens inside like Southdale Mall or like Burnsville Mall, for instance, it's not as visible. But like this was kind of the mall for this area. This was like the retail center.
Right.
And that's left a lot of vacancy. And those empty storefronts matter.
Do you understand commercial real estate? You're the business leader, because it feels like if you have an empty space, you would try hard to get it occupied. And it doesn't feel like anyone is all that motivated to get these spaces filled.
Yeah, I mean, I should like clarify that I'm not an expert in commercial real estate, but my understanding of like, particularly a real estate portfolio, is you're borrowing against like your book value. So if you're valuing, for instance, that old Victoria's Secret store that's on the corner of Lake and Hennepin, if you're valuing that at some 2018 number that you bought it for, it goes in, you know, the bank views it as that value. Like part of what like Trump got in trouble for was overvaluing his real estate.
We got a bunch of mini Trumps out in Uptown overvaluing their real estate. Is that what you're saying?
I think what I was going to say is that if you know, I don't know what the rents were, but let's say today you're getting a rent that's 25-30% of what you used to get, you've got to write down the value of that property, because your commercial real estate value is a function of your, you know, rental revenue.
Right.
And if suddenly your rent goes way down and you have to acknowledge that, you have to acknowledge that the value of the building went way down too.
So at a certain point, they have to pay the piper.
The mentality, at least right now, is, you know, the guy that owns, or the company that owns the Victoria's Secret store, for instance, they own other properties all over the Twin Cities. And so, getting honked at already.
Did you get honked at, Mike Norton?
Somebody got honked at. I think it was a chain of events related to our being here.
Well, you can be behind me if you need to be.
At times I'll have to be out of frame, I'm sorry.
Okay.
But what I was saying is like that person that owns Victoria's Secret store, if they own other properties and they're borrowing against the collective value of all of those properties, and the value is kind of what the bank believes the value to be, once they take a lower rent, they're in trouble.
Right. I don't want to get you killed answering my commercial real estate questions. I didn't bring you out here for that necessarily.
I mean, what better way to go?
We didn't even do anything fun yet. Don't die until we capture enough for a full episode, is all I ask of you. So we're gonna clip this video that we're about to do so that you can post it on your feed and see how much hate we can get. I'm hoping to get like 2 minutes and 20 seconds of us just being insufferable Minneapolis boosters, and I should explain why for people who are taking the time to listen to the full episode. Mike Norton attracts quite a bit of hate on his feed. I can't even describe how offensive and nonsensical some of these replies are. It's like Vladimir Putin hired some internet trolls, really bad ones, and they got lazy and they used AI to generate the replies.
I think a lot of people are, not all of them are real, but I do think a lot of them are people that are just not exposed to Minneapolis or large cities at all, and their perception is based solely on, you know, the Crime Watch accounts or some email they got forwarded or some Facebook post.
But anyway, let's get started. Let's draw some anger from your right-wing trolls. What a vibrant area. Look at all these people. Mm-hmm. The sun is shining. Minneapolis is great. I forget what the organization's name was, but we've been named the happiest city in the United States. We achieved a gold ranking.
Yeah, was it Travel and Leisure, or were they just reporting on it?
They were reporting, but it's a respected organization.
Right.
Says Minneapolis is the happiest place in the United States. You can't argue with that.
No, I mean, I think like when I read that article, my understanding of the criteria was it's based on like people's actual experience in the city. It's not like survey respondents, things like that. And I think people need to realize that, like, I've lived in other cities, you've lived in other cities. I travel a fair amount for work. Like, there's not a lot of places like Minneapolis. There's not a lot of places where you can even have this amount of exposure to shoreline as a park, have protected bike paths all around it, have a band shell, have, you know, all these things that are happening just at parks, and like the parks are highly accessible in this city. So, like, it's not something that's common in the rest of the United States, the experience in Minneapolis. I don't know, I love it here. It's a great place.
Feels like we're being sincere. I thought we were going to play it over the top. That felt like a sincere answer.
I don't know, man. I mean, you see most of my posts. Most of my posts are like boring and sincere. It's like, oh, the lake was pretty today. Like, lovely day in Minneapolis. Yeah. And it's like a picture of like what we're looking at right now. And people are furious because they can't reconcile like that reality with what they've seen on their Facebook feed or what the Crime Watch accounts have told them is happening in Minneapolis.
Which begs the question, why do these people follow you?
I think I ended up on some of the Crime Watch, like,
4 of us.
All right, thanks. Man, there's a ton of traffic. For a shithole that burned to the ground, Minneapolis sure has a lot of people just out enjoying their Sunday.
All these people passing up a couple old guys trying to record a podcast on their bike.
What I was saying was I ended up on the Crime Watch account.
Oh, you made it onto a list?
And then I think people have added me to lists. Like, I think the woman who runs Crime Watch posted me, or like re-quoted me on some like bike path moving truck situation. And it turned into like a huge deal. Like, my wife works or worked at a middle school in Minneapolis, public, you know, schools, and she got to work and somebody asked her about it. Because like, people follow those accounts and they have some rabid like angry reply guys that are just on top of everything.
Yeah, I sometimes will read the racist version of the Minneapolis subreddit. Like all the racist people decided to start their own subreddit where a crime is committed and they're immediately talking about the race of the people who did it.
Right, yeah.
Just so obsessed with finding crimes by the right kind of people so they can get upset about it.
Like the Reformer did a piece on that Minneapolis Crime Watch account where they talked about, like, through an analysis you could see that the majority of their, like, not the majority, but like there was a skew towards racist posts. Like they would ignore certain things and not post them, and they were more likely to post even smaller crimes or lesser crimes if they were a certain race or ethnicity or nationality in particular. And I think like that's, especially if you're not exposed to it, like if you're living out in, you know, greater Minnesota or the exurbs, the only thing you see is the scary things Crime Watch reports to you, then, you know, that becomes your reality.
It was the Institute for Quality of Life. You can't argue with that, Mike Norton.
Right. It's all like Scandinavian countries at the top of the list. And
then Minneapolis.
Well, I think we were like 37th or something, but we were
good enough.
Top of North America, maybe, or maybe
the
behind,
United
like,
States is an asshole country, and I'm glad to be at the top-ranked city in the United States.
Everything's relative.
Yeah.
Like you could be the nicest person at your country club, you know.
Or the best poster in the Wedge. That's my claim to fame.
I mean, there's what, 6 people in front of us. A lot of. Probably the majority of this crowd is approaching the age at which they could take Social Security payments.
And it's 87 degrees.
Yeah, but I mean, the Dutch have this philosophy that everybody between 8 and 80 should be able to get out on the road and, with their bike in a separated path and be safe. And like that's what the parkways kind of achieve, is you don't have to be worried about traffic. You don't have to be constantly, you know, aware of what's around you. You just have this open path where occasionally people pass you or you pass them.
Yeah, there is this idea that if you make your streets safe for pedestrians and bicyclists, it's ageist. And it's the opposite.
Right. You're giving people access that wouldn't have access. We just passed a bunch of a young family, like with young kids, like elementary school age kids or younger. They were out on the bike path, and like they couldn't be out on, you know, Hennepin. So to give them like a safe space that's separated from cars is a big deal.
Look at this, Mike Norton. Somebody's playing the Mario Brothers theme song.
Yeah.
What a glorious, vibrant city.
I mean, looks like there's some sort of a little market going on over here. This is what Minneapolis is like all the time. And this is what people are afraid of somehow, is this shit.
Yeah, retro gaming theme songs. What other city has that?
You get on the other side of that band shell and get yourself a hot dog or an ice cream. You know, this is if you think back to like the way Minneapolis started, it was the end of the railroad from places like Chicago and St. Louis, and before air conditioning, it was a place where you could go in the summer and not be boiling, you know? And so all of these parks were kind of built by tourism. Like they weren't built for the people here, unfortunately, like the residents, in the same way that they were meant to attract tourists. And then that kind of changed as just things do, but like we're left with that infrastructure of these parks that are accessible to anybody that wants to walk around. And, you know, in a place, in other cities, in Miami, like this would probably be all condos, you know, and it wouldn't be accessible. In Dallas, like people live right on the creek, where we have a parkway on the creek. Oh, there's a loon. Is that 3 loons? Or maybe not.
Are you sure those are loons?
I don't think so.
Mike, you're the kind of guy you could talk to at a party and you think, wow, this guy's well-read, but not necessarily. You could have made half of that up. I don't know.
I acknowledge that. Are you talking about the loons? I mean,
No,
I acknowledge that I don't
your
think those were
Minneapolis history talk.
I think, I mean, you could dig into it more, but I think a lot of the park system, was vacationers, especially in the late 1800s, early 1900s, when a lot of this stuff kind of came about.
So what is your transportation routine? We see you posting photos of you with your bike, talking about how great your bike ride was, drawing out the haters,
Right.
doing your creepy little engagement thing.
Creepy little engagement.
Yeah, that's what I refer to social media as, your creepy
Sure.
little engagement thing. I do it too. We're both creeps.
Yeah.
So what was my question? Yeah, what is your real transportation situation? How often are you riding your bike?
I try to ride my bike a few days a week. It kind of depends on what I have going on. But like where we started is a couple blocks from my office, and I live on the south side of Lake Harriet in Lyndhurst. So this is kind of the route that I would take home from work on a day that I rode my bike, is riding around both lakes, because then you're separated from traffic. When I'm not riding my bike, I have an electric vehicle, which I don't think is as meaningful as some other forms of transportation, like busing, for instance. But busing is just so time consuming, and like the lack of consistent routes or frequency of routes kind of becomes an issue if you're needing to get to certain places at certain times for meetings. We just got passed by a kid in a unicorn helmet.
That's true.
That's the speed that we are leisurely strolling around the
We're
lake.
biking at the speed of podcasting. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, one of the things that Minneapolis was supposed to be one of the happiest cities because of is our, quote, robust transportation network.
Right? They did. They called out our transportation system. I'm like, that is partly why I moved to Minneapolis. But I did that with the understanding that it's all relative.
Yeah.
Relatively good transit. I was tired of the suburbs. Wanted to move someplace where I could like walk places.
Yeah.
To go someplace affordable, someplace with passable transit, and bike infrastructure. Also, bike share was a big draw for me at the time, which I would say we don't really have the kind of bike share that's made for residents of the city.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think passable is a good term for transportation in Minneapolis, like the bare minimum.
Right.
And it's enough, but it's not, well, it's probably not enough.
If you live in the right spot, because living in the Wedge is kind of like living in a second downtown where a lot of the bus lines come to you. And so you're reasonably assured you can get where you're going and get a bus back.
Sure.
But if you live someplace where you only have one bus line and then you had to take it downtown for everything, and you're taking like 2-3 transfers,
Right.
then it stops functioning.
Yeah, and I think that's the issue, is like the inconvenience of it. If you need to go from a part of town or go to a part of town that isn't as well serviced, then you end up in a situation where you're not really able to use it. Like if it's going to take you 45 minutes to ride the bus, an hour to ride the bus, or 15 minutes to Uber, a lot of people are going to Uber.
Hennepin reconstruction, you got thoughts on that, or did we already talk that?
I think we talked about it in passing as we came up, but hopeful that when it's completed, it'll be a much better situation than it's been for the last, 50, 60 years? How long has Hennepin been the way it is? Since the 60s? So, I mean, it's just, my office is on Hennepin, and when you walk up, especially north of Lake, where it's effectively a county highway, but with stoplights every block, it's just kind of a shit show. And it's not enjoyable to walk on. It's not safe to bike on. We'll go this way. South Beach, pretty busy.
I think the Uptown Association really screwed that up, because their argument was they don't want anything. Like, don't build it at all, or put it back together the way it was. But a lot of the arguments you hear from the business community on street reconstructions are, don't tear up the street at all. And that's not a way to negotiate, because they're going to reconstruct it, and your only leverage is to say what you want changed.
I think there, especially if you're running a retail shop or a restaurant, which is a lot of what Hennepin is, you had this shift over the last few years away from retail storefronts, and then post-COVID away from daily office work. And like, there's a lot of offices in Uptown, like the Rainbow Building, those two newer buildings where like WeWork put that office. You know, there's office space. Like I have an office in Uptown, and it used to be kind of tough to find one. And now my understanding is like that Rainbow Building is mostly vacant. And that impacts like daily lunch traffic and daily coffee and stuff like that, just the way it did downtown. And then you couple that with the slowing of retail and people like coming to Uptown as a retail destination to go to the fucking Gap. And you lose a lot of the people that would come and buy ice cream or coffee or sandwiches, and it changes the dynamic of the neighborhood. And we're in that shift right now. And if you're a small business owner and you're trying to hold on, and then the city throws Hennepin Avenue reconstruction at you, it can feel like a lot, and you can just be like, hey, I'm barely handling the status quo, don't touch it. So like I can sympathize with that, but to your point, you can't just say like, don't touch it. Like we have to maintain infrastructure. So
I think some of these landlords need to be throwing their tenants a break, because you wouldn't be able to lease that space out to somebody else if that tenant goes away in the middle of a reconstruction.
yeah, well, I think those conversations are probably happening already in a lot of cases. What I'd like to see is people with vacant storefronts, those landlords be penalized for keeping them vacant and not acknowledging the new market conditions.
It gets talked about just to death, and it sounds like an amazing idea, and it never happens.
It happened in Vancouver, BC.
Like in Minneapolis, it's been talked about a ton, and it's a great idea. Even Lisa Goodman was for it. How is this not happening?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that, you know, stuff seems like a crazy idea and a pipe dream until you get the right people in office to vote for it. And maybe they don't have a veto-proof majority in the council right now. Like I don't think Koski would support vacancy tax, for instance.
I don't take it for granted that Koski wouldn't be for that.
I don't know, I'm guessing, but I don't think it's that.
Fry and Paul Masano might be tough to win over.
Yeah, I think you need to be veto-proof at that point. Like you can't get by with just a simple majority and trust Fry to enact it. And what it's like done in British Columbia is it's spurned people to lease out their space for cheap. And like that was part of what made Uptown cool 30 years ago, was like dive bars and record stores and places that like couldn't make a big rent payment but could make it in Uptown.
Somebody was posting on Reddit recently, you can tell I'm constantly on Reddit, about they found an old bumper sticker like "Don't Uptown my Northeast," and then people in the comments were talking about how Uptown is now the gritty place. That bumper sticker was in fashion like 6-7 years ago. And now Uptown is the grittier place, which is what people used to say they want, like, oh, the good old days of Uptown when your car would get broken into, you'd get robbed on the street. Why can't we do that again?
The difference between like Northeast 10 years ago and Uptown today, like they're both gritty, but Northeast was more utilized. Like instead of a vacant storefront, maybe there was some niche business that had been there forever but was paying a small rent so they could get by, you know? And like those types of unique spaces are what made it fun and cool. And I think that's where we need to get with Uptown, is like get the storefronts filled. And even if it's inexpensive, or even if you're not getting the rental revenue you want, maybe like just push people into that direction where they just sell the building if it's not for them. Because like the people it penalizes are the people that live there and work there, not the people that own those buildings, because they live in fucking Wayzata.
Each landlord is operating in their self-interest by saying, no, I'm not gonna budge, I'm not gonna fill this space. But if they each start filling their spaces, all of their spaces become more valuable because there are more people coming to Uptown.
Yeah, I think
it's a collective action problem, I think.
I think it somewhat goes back to like, they don't want to rent it out for less because that'll affect how they can borrow against it. The city kind of needs to nudge them in the right direction on that. Otherwise it's never going to change. Like, it's just going to sit vacant for years. And you look at, like, the Wall Street Journal had this long article on St. Louis and the vacancies in the downtown area that have just kind of started to snowball into a major issue. Do you want to go up, Brian?
Yeah, we can hop
Well,
off
it's a double back, yeah. We go this way.
Woo!
Nice turn.
No, these are some of the coolest bike tricks anyone has ever posted to YouTube. So youtube.com/wedgelive. Mike Norton and I are just taking turns, super sharp.
We should have walked our bikes across the old bridge.
I did that with council member Paul Masano,
Oh,
who was incredibly gracious and nice to me.
I don't think she's a bad person. I think she just is very supportive of the status quo and a problematic council member.
I think she says things that she knows aren't true.
Yeah, but she's
Which then
very
makes
nice.
Makes it hard for me to come to the conclusion she's great. I want to. She was super nice to me, but when I get the feeling you're telling me things you know aren't true, but maybe that's politics. Maybe I'm naive and that's just politics.
I think it has to be a very hollow feeling for a person that like ran against a conservative in Lene Palmisano when she first got into office, and like has said herself, she used to be like the progressive council member, or the progressive candidate at least in Ward 13, relatively speaking, to now, in order to be reelected, basically do nothing. Like maintain the status quo for the people who will reelect her in Ward 13.
She could have a real nice life doing anything. I don't know why choose to be a council member when there's no, I don't know what she's trying to get done.
I would agree with that. Like, it's one thing to like it seemed like Lisa Goodman had things that she,
Well, no, I wouldn't go that far either,
No.
but
we can just, I mean, I like that we used to have that conversation about who had the worst council member and we could really have an argument. But at this point, you've got a really good council member. So
Lisa Goodman had a passion. She seemed to relish punching people in the face. That was what drove her. I don't think Lene Palmisano enjoys the rough and tumble of politics necessarily. So
she's conflict averse for sure.
And so it leaves me with what are you even here for?
Yeah.
She's probably significantly more progressive personally than Goodman, but you wouldn't have known it from the way they conducted themselves. Goodman had a more progressive voting record but like she voted for the 2040 plan. One thing I do give credit to Paul Masano for is voting for the Transportation Action Plan and like not demagoguing Bryant Avenue to death like her opponent did.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the next topic, Mike Norton. You're grandstanding against the DFL. You were the Minneapolis DFL vice chair. You threw a fit.
I did.
And resigned just so you could endorse Kate Mortensen.
That's exactly why I did it, for sure.
Well, that's how is how I'm characterizing it. You, on the other hand, grandstand it to death by saying, oh, you disagree with the process. Nobody wants to sit in a school gym all day.
I've said that the whole time. And I think that was maybe an opportunity for me to bring that to the forefront in a resignation letter that was maybe a little grandstandy. And then I immediately endorsed both Kate Mortensen and then Casey Magan right after that.
It didn't work out, Mike.
Neither of those worked out.
Turns out your endorsement isn't worth
it. It's not. It was like when you endorsed me in Ward 13. Like, it was meaningless.
Yeah. I think I brought you some support.
Dozens of votes.
Yeah.
No. So actually, like, here, I'll break news on your podcast. Behind the scenes in the DFL, there were 2 active code of conduct complaints against me that were about to go through, and I was probably going to get kicked out of office. So it doesn't really mean shit if you.
So you were grandstanding.
Yeah. If I wrote that letter after I got kicked out of office, people would be like, well, he got kicked out of office.
Can you say what, how you violated the code of, how you were alleged
Allegedly,
to violate?
I would say. I mean, there was an instance where the DFL chair, the Minneapolis DFL chair at the time, made maybe a comment that ruffled some feathers about Ronald Reagan.
Oh, geez. They were going to ding you for that?
Well, and then if you remember, the state party chair chose to grandstand on that and give it oxygen. And he gave a quote to the Star Tribune, calling it like beyond the pale and this and that. And then like what happened from there is Fox News and all these things picked it up and turned into like a big fucking deal.
Yeah. Which makes sense, because if there's one thing we know, it's that Republicans of today's MAGA generation, they love Ronald Reagan still.
What he stood for,
Yeah.
right.
Amnesty.
Right. It was just a weird thing, like for the state party chair to like chime in on when I'm fully aware that he's aware. Like there have been conversations when I was DFL vice chair that was like something came up, the press were following up on and wanted to ask questions of myself or the party or Brianna, and we were told like, shut the fuck up, don't give it any air, like don't say anything. So I know that the state party chair is aware of that type of strategy. And I had a long tweet thread discussing as much, in which I called him a snake. And then that was the criticism, is that I called the state chair a snake.
That sounds biblical, Mike Norton.
I was actually quoting Kevin Garnett when he said that he doesn't like Glenn Taylor in the way he does business because he doesn't do business with snakes or people that are snake-like or snake motherfuckers, was the exact quote.
Well, see, I'm not a native Minnesotan. I don't get Minnesota culture, so I came here after the Kevin Garnett era.
Right, I did too, but
I'm more the bring yo ass, or
Sure.
bring yass. Bring your ass?
Bring your ass.
I'm
Yeah.
more of that era, and you can tell because I can't pronounce it.
Right. I think that's already passed, hasn't it? Now that
The bring your ass era is
certain
now
people
over.
have picked it up, it's like,
But
oh.
in 20 years, I could talk to a young person and say, remember that?
It'll be like the blizzard of 93.
Bring your ass
Halloween
will be
blizzard.
our blizzard of 93.
Right.
Just like Snake is your blizzard of 93.
I mean, I lived in Arizona during the Kevin Garnett era, but I've just embraced the culture here and I tried to immerse myself in the vernacular.
What was the other, did you finish your story about the snake? So you were going to get dinged for the snake thing, which I don't, how is that misconduct? You can't insult the Minnesota
I don't know.
DFL chair?
I was kind of ready to be done and like that was happening and it kind of seemed like the writing was on the wall. And I didn't want to run for the chair role because I saw like what Brianna had to put up with. And it seemed fucking terrible. So I was fine getting out and, you know, giving the space to somebody who maybe wanted to be more engaged, the Minneapolis DFL at the caucus level, which I don't really want to be in the same way now. You know, Kate's a perfectly nice person, and I supported just a change to the status quo in Ward 13, so I was like, why not? And I think like she even came on your podcast and talked about how she and I disagreed on a lot of things. I think it has to change in Ward 13 because like the way things are working are not good.
How much of that is due to like who occupies the seat in Ward 13? Not much.
It's an obstructionist occupant right now. Like the intent is to obstruct any change, effectively.
Yeah, but she's not the median vote. She's not even the vote that would tip it on a veto override. It's
Yeah.
like, you can debate it, but like, yeah, I think you've got Vitaw and Palmisano and Rainville there in the bottom three.
Right,
In terms
yeah.
of most conservative.
Koski and Cashman.
And that's not going to be the difference between, you know, overriding a veto or not.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I say this all the time, I don't know that you do better than Palmisano in Ward 13.
Right, you go
ever.
more conservative. You get an actual Republican.
Get somebody who votes against the Transportation Action Plan and adopts all of Palmisano's other policies. So there's no upside. What a vibrant Bryant Avenue, Mike
It's beautiful.
Norton.
Yeah.
I'm going to clip this into our 2-minute and 20-second troll video.
Yeah, man, it is beautiful. And you look at like, they took away just one side of the street for parking and gave us
Plantings
this
over there,
beautiful bike path.
raised crosswalks, stormwater treatment right there in the boulevard. Trees.
Yeah, it's nice. I mean, when this like grows out, it'll be beautiful too. And if you notice, like we haven't really seen any cars because most of the traffic with the one-way now kind of shifted to Lyndale, which is a bigger street anyway. Like it was a more appropriate street for that volume of traffic.
How bad are cars, Mike Norton? How bad are cars? Really bad, right?
I think
so bad.
For a lot of people, they're their only means of conveyance.
We're trying to play it up for
right. Oh, right. I forgot we were still doing the
replies.
I lost track of it. I thought that was the cut.
We're going over the top now.
Sure. The problem is people in Lakeville expect to come to Minneapolis and have a giant fucking parking lot for their F-350, and none of them can parallel park. So they really get upset, and I think those frustrations bleed out into their Minneapolis experience. And it's really just like they need to spend some time learning how to parallel park or buy a more appropriately sized vehicle for the city.
That's good, that's good. Thank you for taking me home to the Wedge. Let me look if I have anything else. I was gonna mention the Institute for Livability or whatever it's called again. Can't say that enough. Happiest city in the nation, Minneapolis is, Mike Norton.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy. Are you? Other than it's a little humid today.
Oh, I bought some sweat handkerchiefs. I don't know if you do this, but I showed up so sweaty to a meeting recently, and I'm like, I gotta have something to wipe myself down. I didn't even bring paper towels, so I bought product placement here on the podcast, the Bicycle Podcast.
You have a sweat handkerchief?
I have a sweat handkerchief.
That's
just to like wipe myself down.
You know,
very absorbent.
I didn't come prepared. You look like a southern gentleman right now. Just like on your porch.
The only criticism in the reviews was the handkerchief can hold so much water that when you put it in your pocket, it will eventually create a wet spot.
So you need to like wring it out as you ride.
Once you've absorbed enough sweat and it's really damp, I would squeeze it out.
Yeah.
You don't want to have damp pants.
Oh, that's good. I mean, that's really just like good to know before you get out in the world with your sweat handkerchief.
Oh, I was gonna razz you for how lame your posting is. You posted a list of it was a ranking of coffee shops in Uptown?
I feel like I have very strong knowledge of the quality of various coffee shops in Uptown and walkability too.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's like years of knowledge that I was transferring to Twitter followers.
And even though that's the worst post anyone's ever posted, it drove the racists wild.
Yeah. No, there was, I mean, like you said, there's stuff like we literally can't talk about on this because it's just...
Yeah, it's so bad we can't say what it was.
If you look at the hidden replies on a lot of my tweets...
Don't do it.
They're very, very bad. But yeah, I think you should take John's advice and not actually do it.
Don't do it.
You're not going to be better for it.
They were hidden for a reason.
I don't know. People get angry, man. People, I think it goes back to that whole Crime Watch thing where they can't reconcile, an area with 15 coffee shops and that there's debate over that when really we should all only be talking about how the city burned down.
I could get into a ranking of grocery stores. I could definitely get into that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you probably have strong opinions on walkable grocery stores from the Wedge.
That's why I moved to the Wedge. We talked about why I moved to Minneapolis. But the grocery store density, transit and bike share, RIP bike share. Nice Ride, Minnesota.
So would you ever release a ranking of Wedge adjacent grocery stores?
It would be like Aldi #1 and then never go to Cub. I used to defend Cub because I felt like the criticism of Cub was all about like classism and like the other people who would shop there. And now I just think Cub is a really bad grocery store. It's not even cheaper than like Kowalski's or Lund's a lot of the time. It is expensive and low quality. Did you rank Canteen on your coffee shop list?
I did. I moved it up in my second ranking. My updated ranking, I moved it up.
You updated that list.
I did. People were very upset. People love the Canteen.
You just not have enough experience with Canteen?
I walk by the Canteen to go to 5 Watt all the time. So I've gone in there, like, it's fine, it's good. I'm not anti-Canteen. Unlike Corner Coffee, I'm not aware of Canteen putting out like homophobic messaging.
Who
But-
puts that homophobic messaging?
Corner Coffee.
Oh. Yeah, the church coffee shop.
Yeah.
I just found that out recently, that they're affiliated with some kind of...
I didn't know all the background of it.
Victor Martinez's church.
Yeah, that's
how
kinda
homophobic they are.
disappointing. But I mean, like good coffee, but kind of similar to Spy House, where the anti-union, the union busting impacted my view of Spy House, for instance. Not that it was like my top spot, but it's lower in the list now because of that. And then like SK, I think is maybe the best coffee in Minneapolis, but the mayor went there and did a photo op, so people will not go there.
What do you expect the owner to do? Say no? No.
I don't think the
mayor.
owner even knew. I think like
No mayor in my coffee shop.
I think it was after the fact, because it wasn't the owner in the picture, it was just the barista.
You know what I would do if the mayor showed up to the cat tour? I would shake his hand and say, "Hello, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for coming to the cat tour."
I think a lot of the criticism of the mayor is that he only does those types of photo ops where he's safe to just get in and get out and make it look like he is part of the community. And then he's very selective on what he'll do in terms of media.
Probably can't do open streets anymore.
Maybe not.
I mean, he does lots of TV news.
Right, but I think that's very selective too. Like he's not taking a lot of critical interviews, I guess is what I would say. Like
Right.
it seems to be pretty
And when you
safe spaces.
When you go with a TV news reporter, this is no insult to the TV news. I watch you all the time, TV news, but it's usually someone who is covering like a range of stories. They've got the cat tour one day, then they're covering a flood in a parking lot the next day, and then they're covering city politics the next. Right. So they're basically asking very superficial, like, how's police recruiting going, Mr. Mayor? Oh, best ever? That's good news.
I mean, you're reading questions off a press release usually, because that's your only exposure to Minneapolis maybe. And ultimately too, the mayor's pretty vindictive, so he might cut you off if you are too critical.
Oh yeah. R.I.P. open streets.
Right. So you end up in a scenario where you have an objectively bad mayor who's doing very little on a number of issues that people care about, but he's not really openly criticized because he doesn't put himself in a place to ever be criticized. And he blamed, when people then feel like they should yell at him in the streets, which I agree, I would not yell at him in the streets, but there are people who are frustrated enough that want to. He acts like everyone else is terrible. And it's like, no man, people are just trying to hold you accountable. People are trying to get you to like come, and discuss some of these things that you're really just not doing. Like, and I don't know. The mayor is a disappointment.
It's true. You heard it here. Mayor Fry is a disappointment. In a normal city, he would have lost in 2021. He rode that crime backlash.
Exactly. Like he didn't win a majority. He won a plurality after multiple rounds of ranked choice voting based on him saying that the two women that were running on police accountability and public safety reform were scary.
And then like a month into his next term, Amir Locke is killed in a no-knock raid.
Right.
A thing
after he lied
thing
about
he said
yeah.
had been banned.
Right.
Sorry to rehash this for everyone who's I just go over that so much in my mind. What a disappointment he is.
Yeah. I think people forget because he just avoids any sort of public scrutiny. I think 80-90% of the people that vote in city elections too aren't tuned in the whole time, So unless you're you and like going to city council meetings or like Josh Martin or all these people that are just highly engaged,
yeah, it's
hard not to like see that full string of events. And then also the mayor's actions or lack of action after those events. And like, I think even from the other side, people that voted for him aren't necessarily that supportive of him. They're just scared of what the alternative could have been.
Yeah.
And I've heard third hand that police officers kind of see a vacancy in leadership in the role that is supposed to have MPD report up to it in the mayor's office, So
Do you have police sources?
I've talked to people that are in the know.
Okay.
And you looked at like what happened after George Floyd and it was just like cowboy shit. Like MPD just roving around in vans with no real command oversight. And like the mayor has never really gained control since. Like they're on a sick out, just negotiated a 21% pay increase.
That's why I'm demoralized so Jamal Mitchell, Officer Jamal Mitchell was killed a couple of weeks ago in late May.
Who seemed like a good guy, who seemed like the kind of like person you would want on a police force, even if you're critical of police.
A legitimate tragedy, but I fear that it has taken us into the era of hero worship of MPD and not like continuing to recognize they are the winners of the unprecedented double consent decree. Like same department, didn't change because one guy who by all accounts was great was killed doing heroic things. That doesn't change. That's not, the solution wasn't to have one police officer do a heroic thing and the system is fixed.
Yeah, no, and I think like, again, going back to like that Crime Watch follower, it's hard for that person to maybe reconcile how you can mourn that police officer and
still be critical of MPD.
Still be, you know, critical and want to hold police accountable.
Let's proceed through the historic district and sign off, Mike Norton. Do you have any recommendations for people?
Recommendations?
Yeah, what are you enjoying lately? What do you like to do? What makes you happy? Take a bike ride through vibrant, happiest city in the United States, Minneapolis.
What I've been doing actually a lot lately is putting together IKEA furniture, unfortunately.
Really? For
my wife just started like an art studio for kids, the North Star Art Club. And I've been putting together like the tables for the kids to sit at and chairs and things like that to kind of get her up and running. She's the art teacher at a middle school and she got reduced, so she's not going to be returning next year.
Victim of the budget cuts.
Yeah. So I think we're fortunate in a place where she kind of had different options, but there's a lot of particularly like arts teachers that are trying to hobble together multiple partial workloads and turn them into a full-time gig right now. And like Minneapolis Public Schools is just kind of in this death spiral from a budget perspective right now. And I think suffering from some of that same, like the school's budget comes from the state, and the state legislature, even DFLers, don't want to give money to Minneapolis because it's not politically advantageous to help Minneapolis, one, and then two, like it's a high cost per student just because of the nature of like how the schools are built, where you don't have 3,500 kid high schools, you have 1,200 kid high schools, and you can't have the same economies of scales for programming or facilities or anything else. So it's a problem, and like nobody's dealing with it, and it's just going to get way worse.
Well, thank you, Mike Norton, for joining me on another bike ride edition of the podcast. Go to youtube.com/wedgelive to watch these episodes, and especially take in the vibrant Wedge neighborhood, which is where we're at right now as we end this episode, in the happiest city in the nation, Minneapolis. This has been the Wedge Live podcast. I'm your host, John Edwards. Thank you for listening.
This is a real thing. Real thing.
None of you have the balls to stop this. Stop this.
I've got plenty of time. I have nothing else going on today.
We're in the Wedge neighborhood right now.